We watched Bolt lying flat on their back, not sure what had just happened. If this was another of Glitterbug's little tricks, I was ready to strangle her. After just a moment, Bolt sat back up, and the shard fell out of their chest and dropped to the ground. Bolt slowly picked up the fragment and told us that they had had a vision of sorts. In their mind, they were floating through a sea of fog. Then suddenly, they were on a ship and there was something said about engine failure. Next thing they knew, they had crashed in the marshlands. 4 figures stood over Bolt. They reached into their chest and pulled something out, then broke it into pieces, explaining that whatever they took from Bolt was the only way out. I don't know what this vision means. I'm not even sure Bolt knows what it means. Is Bolt missing a part of themselves? What was the item removed? Bolt's soul? Who were these people and how did Bolt end up in their company? Bolt confirmed that the diamond-shaped shard we found does not look like the one that was taken from their chest. We each took a turn holding the fragment, inspecting it. Bolt inhaled deeply and remarked that the piece smelled like order. Sari snatched it from Bolt's hand and took a deep breath. To her, it smelled like fire. We each took turns smelling the object, and we each identified a different scent. For Victor, it smelled like sheep. Ezra detected the scent of arcane magic. And to me, it smelled of giant. Mother, I've never even seen a giant, but I just knew that's what I was smelling. Victor thinks we should take the fragment to the Arcanum, but I think that's a terrible idea. Although the Arcanum do provide protection to most of Aneria, I'm not sure I trust them. I revealed to the group that Lucan has tasked me to find Ezra's book and that I was to keep it out of the hands of the Arcanum. I could tell Ezra wasn't exactly thrilled that I had been withholding information from him, but I promised him that if it came to me choosing between him and Lucan, my employer, I will choose him. The trio's approval of my companions is the only bit of information I consider when choosing allegiances. I showed my comrades the ring Lucan had given to me, and sent him a message for more information on who has hired us to find Ezra's book. I received a return message that said negotiations have been stalled. The purple mass was still wriggling beneath our feet, so Ezra scorched it, just to be certain it was extra dead. We turned to find another archway. We walked through it and found ourselves, once again, in Glitterbug's courtyard. We showed Glitterbug the glowing ember core. She confirmed that it was, indeed, the core of Ambaris. Glitterbug told us that if we could resurrect Ambaris, he would likely return to the Sanctum. And now that the Sanctum was safe, the Medmen attacks would stop. Glitterbug turned her attention to Ezra. He really is adorable, though I think he would take offense to my calling him such. He's quite tall, however, not nearly as looming as Bolt. His skin has a greenish hue that reminds me of the lamb's ear that grows on the south side of our home. His hair is the color of an eggplant, which pair beautifully with his amber eyes. He can be a bit awkward at times, but I think it's because he spent most of his life reading and learning. Books don't provide much by way of socialization. Glitterbug gathered a burned twig from the orange barrier, a frozen twig from the blue, and a purple crystal. Out of these 3 items, she crafted a wand of mischief for Ezra. Of course, mischief. There can be no Glitterbug without it. Soon we heard a little grumbling coming from the trees. Ainur Elowir had awoken and was about as agreeable as spoiled milk. She's short of stature, but her personality is big. She was glad to see we made it through the tests of the Sanctum. Her memory had failed her when she reached the story of the Weeping Swordsman and wasn't able to complete the task. Ainur handed me my snuggle beast. She didn't seem too impressed with it. Sari and I named our snuggle beasts. What good is an adorable snuggly without a name? Sari's shall henceforth be called Mr. Growly, and mine, Tufflepuff. Glitterbug even made little collars for them with their names. I've never had a best friend before, except for you, of course. I didn't know how much I needed a Sari in my life. I asked Glitterbug if we could keep in contact with her. She took the ring Lucan gave to me and gave it a little tap. She explained I could reach her any time using my ring. When I looked at the ring again, there was a new little pink band around it with a butterfly wing engraved on it. Finally, we were able to leave the sanctum. As we stepped through the archway we had originally traveled through, I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The air in the real world feels magnificently fresh. We made our way back to where we would find Kes and the airship. However, when we arrived in the clearing, instead of being greeted by a quirky kobold, we were ambushed by 3 humans, a wizard and 2 thugs, a minotaur, and an orc. What a welcome party. The minotaur said something menacing about how he said we'd find you here. Victor immediately threw one of his knives, but it was buffeted by the wizard. We all looked at one another and shrugged. What's another fight among friends? We told Ainur to run and hide while we took care of business. I looked over at Seredan and watched as her eyes turned completely black, and she became enveloped in a thick cloud of darkness. I wasn't sure what to think, but didn't have much time to do so anyway. Bolt unleashed their chain and lashed the Minotaur, pulling him closer to us. Ezra threw his orange web, trapping the 2 bandits in place. Seredan ran straight at the orc. The cloud of darkness that surrounded her engulfed the orc, and when she moved past where he was gone. I had to look twice to make certain my eyes weren't deceiving me. I felt a pit in my stomach. The hulking Minotaur was standing over me. He smelled like rotting meat and a hide-skin rug that had been left out in the rain. I expressed my feelings about his body odor, and the last thing I remember was feeling his weapon slash my chest. When I came to, Victor was standing over me, holding an empty potion of healing. I think he mixed a little vodka in there as well. I didn't care. I could breathe again. I stumbled to my feet as Bolt smashed the Minotaur with their gauntlets. I took a swing with my longsword and exacted my revenge, though it was short-lived. I couldn't seem to avoid getting hurt. Ezra was a shining star. I watched as he deflected bolt after bolt fired at him from a crossbow. Seredan moved toward the wizard, and he was surrounded in her darkness. Again, when she stepped away, he was gone. The pit in my stomach grew. These enemies were troublesome, to be sure, and they attacked us without reason. But watching as the orc and the wizard just disappeared into a cloud of darkness, I hate even admitting this, but it felt a bit evil. Victor surrounded the Minotaur with his knives, and I saw a glint of fear in his eyes. He had every reason to be scared, because soon he was shrouded in Seredan's cloud of darkness. Ezra lit one of the bandits on fire, and Seredan killed the other with her glaive. I could still smell the loathsome Minotaur standing in front of me, though he was obscured by Seredan's darkness. I thrust my longsword into the cloud. I knew I had killed him when his blood came pouring out of the darkness and down my arm. Bolt delivered a swift uppercut to the last bandit, and the fight was over. Seredan reappeared as the darkness vanished, and Seredan's eyes were once again a beautiful emerald. We gathered up the crossbow and bolts and called Kes down to pick us up. Ainur crawled out from the rock she was hiding behind. She's several decades my senior. She looked all of us over, and I got the feeling we were just the type of trouble people of her maturity complain about over brunch. Kes dropped down the fraying ladder, and we all made the climb to board the greatest treasure. To our amazement, Kes had completely reassembled Ainur's caravan on the deck of the ship. We supplied him with the crossbow and bolts. He is an odd one, but I'm glad it was he who sold us to Hollowbend. I asked Kes if we could stay in touch with him. I handed over my ring. He fiddled with it a bit, then handed it back, and I saw a little gear had been etched into the ring. I can reach him any time, though he did boast about how busy he usually is, being highly in demand. When we returned to Six Hills and docked the airship, we were immediately greeted by Justicar Whitehall, Holly, Instructor Cryer, and Balin Heck. Apparently, Brander, the student we had sparred with at the Millibrax College, had gotten his feelings hurt when we defeated him and decided to meddle in our mission. You will recall Brander was the one with the rapier and the punchable face. He had told the Minotaur and his friends where to find us. He is, of course, now missing. He was smart to run. Justicar Whitehall provided payment for a job well done. No sooner had the money hit our palms than Balin Heck was rushing us off to complete the Brewbash judging. Victor declined our invitation to come along, saying that he needed to meet with Yinny. I think they make a great couple. The winners of the Rubash competition were announced. To the surprise of no one, except perhaps the Edaquathan, Chateau Morlane took first place. I was thrilled to see Gale and Brock Farthing along with their goat Twiddle accept an honorable mention at Einor's request. We were all exhausted. As we started trudging back to our beds at the Whistling Bull, we bumped into Hollix, the Minotaur with the churning elemental we had met through our judging duties earlier in the day. Hollix mentioned he comes from a little village of brewers and that he's happily engaged to another Minotaur. That pit filled my stomach again, Mother. Hollix is so sweet. What if it had been his fiancée that I killed in Hollowbend earlier today? I don't think that is something I would ever be able to forgive myself for. When I returned to my room at the Whistling Bull, the first thing I did was check my ring for messages. The ring was cold and blue, meaning there was a message waiting for me from Lucan. I pulled a scrap of parchment from the ring. Lucan wrote that his employer wants to meet the book carrier in Terrebonne. I walked down the hall to Sari's room and slipped in the door. She was soaking in the huge tub in the center of the room. She invited me to join her, and as she did so, a tub identical to hers rose out of the floor, already filled with hot water and bubbles. I looked down at myself. I was still covered in rust-colored dried blood, both my own and the Minotaur's. I needed a good soak. I sat beside Sari's tub and started taking off my armor. I told her what Lucan had said in his message and asked her what I should do. I think we need to meet this employer, but I don't want to put Ezra in danger. Sari asked what Lucan knew of her. I told her that he didn't know anything. Sari suggested that she pretends to be Ezra. She really is quite brilliant. I'll tell Lucan that we'll depart for Terrebonne tomorrow. I lowered myself into my tub and felt my worries melt away. It was quiet for some time, when Sari asked so quietly that I almost didn't hear her if she had scared me today. I struggled to find the right words. Sari has become much more to me than just a travel companion. She's the only person I can be my true self around. And despite knowing all of me, she still loves and accepts me. I admitted to Sari that I was not afraid of her so much as I'm afraid of losing her. And that darkness filled her eyes. I fear we're headed down different paths. It takes real bravery to confess one's fears. Sari told me that the darkness scares even her. It seems the choir's mission is to find balance through whatever means necessary. Sari blames herself for the darkness. She was raised by her mother, and her father was completely absent from her life. When her mother died, she was sent off to live with her Da, a man she had never met. A childhood like that could create an identity crisis for even the most grounded individual. More than anything, the choir, through Craggy, have given Sari power. Mother, I can attest, the power of the darkness is expansive. I've witnessed what she can do with it with my own two eyes. But it makes Sari feel good, and who am I to take that from her or to belittle her wants? I told Sari about the time you took me hunting for Luna berries. It was in the pitch black of night. I was always so afraid of the dark. I still am. My imagination can easily craft the most hideous of monsters in the unknown. You insisted I join you, and I clung to your arm, trembling with fear as we walked through the forest. The canopy was so dense, not even the faintest twinkling of a star's light came through. We finally entered a clearing, and the full moon shone down through the branches, illuminating the Luna berries for us to pick and enjoy. I suggested to Sari that sometimes we need the darkness to more clearly see the light. I am not always good with words, Mother, but I think that story was just the right thing to say. Sari used to pick Luna berries with her mother as well. They're called Ilispe in Elven. Every month in Taria Moon, where Sari grew up, she and her mother would hunt for the berries under the full moon. Instead of the pie you made for me, Sari's mother would bake the berries into a delicious bread pudding that they would eat with clotted cream. We both agreed to hunt for Luna berries together on the next full moon. We'll even try our hands at baking some homemade sweets. Sere also suggested I learn to embrace the darkness by learning to fight in it. Maybe Victor can help. I have much to learn. Love, Eve.